In this tutorial, we'll make a simple train, link in the vehicle, and then apply the modified Blenderesse geometry node script to see the vehicle moving. And a big thanks to Jesse Meichen and Blenderesse for releasing this network. I'll put his Gumroad link below, so make sure to click there and donate. The modified version we'll be using of this can be downloaded from a link that I'll put below. We'll start with a new scene. A to select all, X to delete and clear it. Shift A to make a plane. And we'll scale it up to about 30 by 30 meters. Control A to apply the scale. Now tab for edit mode and A to select all, and we're going to pick edge, subdivide. And we're going to do this 5 or 6 times to give ourselves a decent amount of mesh to work with. All right, tab to exit edit mode, then move to the sculpting tab and click and drag to build some large heaves in the terrain. Right click and increase your radius if you want, and that makes the heaves more gentle. The geometry nodes system works better with gradual heaves. Control click and drag to make valleys. Shrink our radius a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now we have some hills and valleys for our off-road vehicle to zip around on. All right, let's go back to the layout tab and F2 to rename the plane to ground. And make sure the ground object is selected, and then right click on the ground object, hit say shade smooth, then click the material tab and press new to make a new material, and select your base color, and let's make a brown base color. Go. And set your roughness to 1 and your specular to 0 so it won't be shiny at all. And Control S, and we're going to save this in our scenes directory. And we'll make a new directory, and we'll name it Jeep Drift. And the scenes directory is where the linked scene files go, and scene files are where we generally will add animation. For a more complex setup, we would construct the set in a different blend file and link it into the scene, but for this simple file, it's just a single object in the scene. So now we'll link in the file. Let's do file link, and we're going to go up and go to our props, where we put our Jeep CJ6, and pick the Jeep CJ file system there and uncheck instance collections, click link, and now pick collection and then pick CJ6. So we've linked in our CJ6. Now we're going to repeat that for the wheels collection, file, link, and we're going to uncheck instance collections because we want to be able to work with the individual components of the collection file and click link. Okay, so CJ6 and wheels are both linked into the scene. Now put both of these collections under the top scene collection. So we'll highlight both of these and drag these into the scene collection. Now linking external props like this is really useful as we're not carrying the object with us in the scene file. And that becomes important when the scenes get big. You want to split things up and link them together. Also, when we update something in the vehicle file, we can change to our Blender file view, our outliner. And we can come down here and we can right click and click reload, and that'll reload the data from our newly saved Jeep prop file. Let's right click on the CJ6 collection and duplicate it. And we're going to rename that collection CJ6 geometry nodes to keep things organized. And then we're going to disable it. We'll use this duplicate collection to load into the geometry nodes rig, as otherwise the baked motion of the original collection will transfer into the geometry nodes rig and really throw things off post-bake. So next we'll add in the geometry nodes rig. We'll use append for this as linking isn't as useful for this node group. So we'll go file, append, and in this case we'll go up to our tools and off-road rig, and we'll pick that. Pick node tree, and we're going to pick Blenderesse off-road rig generator. Okay, so you'll see that it made another little annotation, but you don't see anything yet. And that's because it's a geometry nodes network, but we haven't yet created geometry to apply it to. Okay, so we're going to right click on scene collection and we're going to make a new collision objects collection. Rename collision objects. Okay, select the ground object, hit M, and move it to collision objects. Now to enable the rig network, we first need to create some geometry. We're going to rename this collection to rig info. We're going to highlight this and hit F2 and rename that to rig info. So with the rig info collection selected, hit Shift A, and we're going to make a simple mesh cube, and we're going to rename it, F2 to rename it, and we're going to name it GN Rig. And the rig network also needs a curve to drive along, so we're going to shift right mouse button click on the ground mesh in the Collision Objects collection to set the 3D cursor. Then we're going to do Shift A, and we're going to add a curve, a Bezier curve. Okay, period, and zoom in on that. Now we're going to hit GZ and move that curve vertically so that it's slightly over all of the terrain, but not too far up, otherwise it won't work. We're going to select the GN Rig object, and then we're going to move to the Geometry Nodes tab. With Geometry Nodes Rig selected, we're going to hit New to add a Geometry Nodes modifier, and then we're going to pick the Blenderesse network from the dropdown. All right, a lot of stuff going on here. Fortunately, you don't need to understand most of it. Most of the controls are over here in the Modifiers tab. So under the Modifiers, we're going to pick the Wheels slot, and we're going to type in WH to search, and we're going to click Wheel Origin, because we need to pick a piece of geometry. And then we're going to pick the body slot, and we're going to pick the CJ6 geometry nodes for the body. And we're going to pick the curve slot, and we're going to pick, we need to rename this driving path. All right, go back and click on the Geometry Nodes Rig, and we'll go down and pick our curve. And our curve is driving path. Okay. And for the ground detection slot, we're going to choose Collision Objects. So we can see things are starting to happen over here. The Jeep will now appear on the curve path with the wheels on the ground, but it looks a little funny looking. So we can disable the wheels in the CJ6 collections for right now to clear up the scene a little bit, because this is all being constructed as a geometry output by the Geometry Nodes Rig. Now we need to animate the Jeep on the curve motion. So if you don't see a timeline, right-click on the Geometry Nodes area, pick Horizontal Split, and let's give ourselves a bit of a timeline. Then we can hit Shift F12 repeatedly in that area until we get our timeline. There we go. We can move that up a bit. All right, now we're going to hit Shift Left arrow to get to frame 1 of the timeline. And in the Geometry Nodes Animate Path parameter, we're going to type 0 to set that animation path to 0. I'm going to hit I to set a keyframe. Now we're going to move to frame 250. You can either use scroll wheel to locate a timeline, or you can hit Shift Right arrow. And we're going to, in the Geometry Nodes Animate Path, we're going to set 100. And going to hit I with the cursor hovering over that, and that sets another keyframe. 0 to 100 controls how it moves back and forth on that Bezier curve. Okay, and as we can scroll back and forth, we can see the vehicle is moving very slightly on our Bezier curve. The vehicle isn't moving very far, so we need to make the curve longer. So we'll go numpad 7 to go to our top view, click our driving path, and we can grab and move it around a little bit to give us a better starting point. We're going to click Tab to go into edit mode. Now you can see the control handles for the Bezier curve. So go ahead and drag to select the starting vertex. And it's easy to see as we're looking down on the vehicle. There we go. Period to zoom in. We can click and drag on the Bezier handles with G to set the initial start of the line to be a bit more straight. And just to make sure our handles are not angling up and down, we're moving the handles with middle mouse tab along the axes. Now we're going to drag to highlight the front selected vertex. And we'll zoom out a little bit, and we can hit Control right mouse button to select a few more points on the curve. And we'll just have it go over here. Now the vehicle will move along the length of the curve if you move the timeline slider. So we can see how it's moving. There it goes, and we can see it's sliding rapidly around the corners. We can adjust that a little bit later. And we can adjust the control points on the Bezier curves by clicking and dragging, by hitting G. Drag to select, G to grab a handle, and then drag to select, to grab, and then we can move these and smooth these out a little bit. Look quite as extreme. Okay. Switch here to make sure we're still on the same level. Tab to exit out of edit mode, then select the Geometry Nodes Rig object. And we can switch the suspension view off by setting suspension visibility to 0. So things are looking a little bit better as we go along the timeline. But the vehicle wheelbase isn't correct. It's doing some extreme things there. Okay, so we'll fix those. So let's switch to the original Jeep prop file. So we'll switch to the original Jeep prop file. And we already know that the wheelbase is 2.65 meters. Now type numpad 3 to see the Jeep from the front. We can highlight both of these, our wheel front left and front right, and we can zoom in, accuracy up a little bit. And with the measure tool selected, we can click and drag from one point to the other point. And we can see that our wheel width is 1.2 meters. Okay, so let's switch back to the scene file. We're going to set our wheel span to 2.655 meters and our wheel width to 1.2 meters. All right. And now our Jeep is a little bit of a high riser still. So we're going to drag the body adjustment Z down to about minus 0.34 and drag the body adjustment X to about minus 0.13. Let's turn on our materials view and we can see our Jeep, and we immediately notice that we have some reversed tires. To fix this, toggle back to the Jeep prop blend file. I'm going to switch out of my measure mode. I'm going to select my wheel origin, and I'm going to type in RZ180, flip it around, hit Control A to apply our rotation, and Control S to save. We'll toggle back to our Blender scene file, and we'll go to our Blender file view in our outliner, go down to our Jeep, right click, and click Reload. All right, and there we go. All right, let's change the outliner view back to view layer, and we can see that the wheels are now going the right direction. Our Jeep is going around the corner, and it's doing some kind of extreme things there. So let's fix some animation aspects of it. We're making sure that our driving path is a little bit higher than the terrain we're on. And back in our Geometry Nodes object in our Modifiers tab, you can keyframe points along the path to adjust vehicle animation parameters. Numpad 7 to go on top, Shift left arrow to go to frame 1. We're going to set drift to 0 here. And I'm going to hover over drift, hit I for a keyframe. We're going to move forward in time and to a point where it'd be drifting a lot. And we'll hit drift and we'll modify it to 0.5 for a bit more subtle drift. Press I to hold the keyframe. And then we're going to hit Shift right arrow to move to the end. And we'll bring drift back to 0 and hit I for a keyframe. Okay, then when we go back and we hit play, our vehicle is behaving a little bit more physically normally. It still has a bit of a drift there, and it's coming around. And you can do all sorts of things with this animation with keyframing pretty easily, because most of the properties of the Geometry Nodes rig can be keyframed this way to adjust the animation. All right, let's go back to layout and click S for save.